Hi, my name is Michael Green. I'm Superintendent of Public Schools for Woodland Public Schools. If you've navigated to this page, you're here to learn more about the educational program and operations levy that voters are being asked to consider renewing between now and February 13th. What exactly is an EP&O levy? The Educational Programs and Operations Levy funds fill the gap between what the state and federal government provide and the real cost of operating schools. In Washington state, the Constitution in Article 9 has the strongest language of any state in the whole Union when it comes to articulating the state's responsibility for funding education, where it says it is the paramount duty of the state to make ample provision for the education of all children residing within its borders. It goes on further to say that it is the legislature's job to provide for a general and uniform system of public schools. The words general and uniform will go into a little more detail, as well as the word ample. What does general and uniform look like in Washington state schools? There is in statute something called the prototypical school funding model. This model is a very basic model of education. It does very well at funding teachers. It does well at funding administrators, secretarial staffing, at least in the allocation of how many we should have. But it does very poorly in funding the real cost of those employees. It also does really poorly with funding classified staff. A classified staff is anybody who doesn't have a teaching certificate. As an example, teaching assistants district-wide, we have funding for just a few over 4 full-time people. The real need is at least 15 to serve our students and support their learning. In terms of custodians, we are funded for about 9.5, and the real need is about 16. In terms of nurses, we're funded a little over 2. The real need is 4. Technology, we receive funding for just a little over 1 person, and the real need to keep our kids safe online, to provide the technology and support they need, is 5 full-time people. And in the area of safety and security, which is important to parents and school people alike, we receive funding for less than a half-time person when the real need is at least 3 full-time people to support the safety and security needs of students. Again, the prototypical model underfunds the real costs of things like utilities, insurance, supplies, materials, technology, things that are fixed costs that we don't have a lot of flexibility with. Statewide, insurance was underfunded this year by $75 million. Statewide, utilities were underfunded by $45 million, and that's a number from a couple of years ago. I didn't have current information. It does not even come close to funding the staffing needs to support our diverse learners, like students in special ed, highly capable, multilingual learners. Those are all supported with local levy funds. And it provides zero support for athletics, field trips, extracurricular activities, clubs, and so forth. The second word is uniform. And what does uniform look like in our context? I'll tell you straight up that the state model is not uniform. Clark County schools, just to the south of us, all receive between 6% and 9% more funding for staff because of the state's regionalization model. Yet, the vast majority of Woodland teachers drive through school districts that receive more funding from the state to pay their salaries and benefits. We depend on the EP&O levy to remain competitive as we support employee wages and benefits. And that is a challenge that, by the state model not being uniform, is put back on local communities. So what is the EP&O request? We are requesting a 3-year EP&O levy beginning in the year 2025 and concluding in the year 2027. And the collection amount is on the right-hand side of this table. And then in the middle is the estimated levy rate that would cost taxpayers per thousand of assessed value. These numbers are based on some very conservative factors, and it is anticipated that as the levy progresses, the cost to taxpayers will actually be less than that. How does it compare historically? Historically, you will see that since these numbers reflect since 2015 up until the current, we've had a growing levy amount, and at the same time, largely declining levy tax rate. But the thing that has remained stable, or relatively stable, is the percent of the levy when compared to the state funding we receive in terms of apportionment. So we believe that these 3 years of the levy will remain consistently in that 15-16% range that we've had historically. I mentioned a few slides ago that the $2.20 is an estimated rate. And there's only been 1 year in the 17 years that I've lived in Woodland that we missed that, and that was during the Great Recession. That said, the board, in sensitivity to taxpayers, is going to guarantee that your tax rates will not exceed that $2.20 per 1,000. By resolution on November 16th, they set the guarantee of $2.20 or less for the entire term of this levy. Just a little factoid. Currently, in 2024, Woodland is part of a very small minority. 0.6% do not have, of the students in the state of Washington, do not have the support of local levy funds. And Woodland is the only district in Southwest Washington who is experiencing that as of 2024. What does the EP&O levy pay for? It's important for people to understand that Woodland has a track record of fiscal responsibility. We have annual audits that consistently, year over year, we receive praise from the state auditor's office for how well we manage funds, and have historically been very, very conservative in the work we do. And the way we figure out what the EP&O levy pays for is we look at revenues that come in that are earmarked for a certain thing, say basic education dollars to support teachers and so forth in the classrooms, and what we actually spend, the real cost of doing business. So the biggest category of the levy is 43.5%, which is basic education. Basic education is teachers to reduce class size and support the real cost of their salaries, paraeducators, school nurses, special education, smaller class sizes, advanced classes, and so forth. The second largest category at 27% is maintaining the facilities that the community has provided, keeping the roofs from leaking, keeping the buildings secure from intruders, providing maintenance and custodial services to keep them well maintained. So that's another 27% of the levy. 11.2% is directly related to student athletics, activities, and clubs. It pays for all of the arts, the athletics, the extracurricular activities for kids. The next slice, about 7%, is dealing with technology for students. We already mentioned that we're funded for just a little over one person to support technology, and it takes 5. Additionally, we have lots of technology available to students, one-on-one Chromebooks at the middle school and high school levy, and they're just a very important part of providing 21st century learning skills to kids. 6.3% of the EP&O levy supports transportation and food services, and then another 5.2% covers our operating costs and materials different from what the state provides. The flyer that you received probably in the mail has this chart, and you can refer to those. I will note that the percentages in that flyer are absolutely accurate. There were a few typos in some of the numbers, and an updated version of this chart has been posted on the Woodland Public Schools website. Another question we often get is how much of our budget is the levy? The vast majority of our funding, just under 80%, comes directly from the state, 79.14%. This comes back to that prototypical school funding model. The second slice is just a little over 4%, and these are the federal funds. If you're looking at our budget documents, you'll say, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. That's because I took out the COVID relief funding when doing this calculation. So this is more of a baseline, what we typically receive. And then the EP&O levy comes in the form of about 12% of our budget. Then there's a last little slice, about 3.5%, that are things like lunch fees and so forth that come in, athletic fees that support programs but are not local taxpayer dollars. So that's the picture of where our funding comes from and the importance of that 12.3%, which is really the roof over our schools. A lot of questions that come up, and if you have more, please feel free to drop us an email. We're happy to answer any questions you have, but among the frequently asked questions we get are that the OSPI website says that Woodland Public Schools spends more money per student than many of our neighboring districts, perhaps any of our neighboring districts. If that's true, why do we need a levy? And I'll confirm right now that's what the OSPI website says, but it's really apples to oranges when you compare it to other school districts. There's this little thing called KWRL, the Kalama Woodland Ridgefield La Center Transportation Cooperative that serves and supports our students and the transportation needs of those kids. Woodland is the fiscal responsible for the fiscal side, the books for it, and all the revenues and expenses come through Woodland's books. We created a brief video because this comes up so often that hopefully will help explain it. So bear with me as we watch the video. It's only about a minute and a half.
Why does OSPI list Woodland's per pupil cost at $17,986, a much higher cost when compared to our neighboring districts? The reason is that KWRL, the transportation cooperative that provides bus services, is headquartered in Woodland. The KWRL Transportation Cooperative provides school bus services for 4 school districts: Kalama, La Center, Ridgefield, and Woodland. However, since Woodland Public Schools oversees the entire cooperative, all of KWRL's funding goes through our budget. As part of Washington state requirements for all school district cooperatives, the funding must funnel through a single district. That means the transportation funding for all 4 school districts funnels through the single district where the service is based. In this case, Woodland. In other words, Woodland Public Schools' per pupil cost includes the transportation funding for Kalama, Ridgefield, and La Center, in addition to the funding Woodland Public Schools pays to transport its own students. When you remove all of the transportation funding for the other 3 districts, the actual per pupil cost for a student in Woodland Public Schools is $16,078, 6.52% lower than the state average of $17,199 per pupil. To learn more, visit www.woodlandschools.org. Why does OSPI list Woodland's per pupil cost at
Hopefully that did a good job of explaining the challenge we have with helping people understand that, in fact, we don't spend more than our neighbors. I tend to like looking at detail and benchmark comparisons to make sure that our taxpayers are getting the best value for the taxpayer dollar. And following some of these questions, we did some research and found data that helps explain a little bit better what some of the realities are. This data looks at different revenues, and the way you read it is there's a light gray bar in each one of these categories. That represents all the districts in Southwest Washington and the range of revenue from low to high. There is a bold bar, probably most easily seen on the lowest part of this, a bold bar which is the average. Then there is a green dot. The green dot represents Woodland Public Schools, and all the other dots represent the other districts in Southwest Washington. When you look at local property tax, we are right in the average range. Timber excise tax, right in the average range. The apportionment, we receive less than average in terms of the state funding. I'm guessing that all these districts to the right of Woodland are the districts to the south of us in Clark County, where they receive 6 to 9% additional funding. Then this last one, transportation operations. You can see that this average bar, and then here is Woodland, a couple of $1,000 more per pupil in terms of transportation funding, and that is entirely because of K-World. Our next closest district is all the way down here at about $1,250. The other question we get is, I hear that Woodland Public Schools is top-heavy with too many administrators. Is that true? Here's the real data. This is data from 2 years ago, the most current data we have, and it looks at every district in Clark and Cowlitz counties. The way this is, what these numbers represent, or these bars represent, are the number of students per certificated administrator. So in Battleground School District, they have 227 students per administrator. In Castle Rock, they have 151.4 per administrator. All the way here on the right is Woodland, 282 students per certificated administrator. We have, in fact, the lowest ratio of administrators to students in Southwest Washington. Another way to look at administrative spending that goes beyond our principals and other educational administrators is to look in different categories of expenditures. The way this is read is this zero, and the bar associated with it is the average within funding, and the grayed out dots are all the districts in Southwest Washington, and in this case the blue dot is Woodland Public Schools. Our spending in terms of board of directors, superintendent's office, business office, human resources, principal's office, extracurricular, and food service is below average. The grounds maintenance and operations of buildings, when you combine them together, is about average. And then all of these over here are representing transportation. But every area outside of transportation, we are actually below average for the region. The next topic that we get asked about is student performance, and the question ultimately, am I getting a return on my investment of tax dollars? Student performance in English language arts, we have been on a very good trajectory. Beginning in 2016-17, we have seen steady rises in terms of student performance in English language arts. Then along came our COVID year, 2019-20. And following COVID, as people well have heard, if you've paid attention to the media, student performance nationwide took a significant decline. And in English language arts, we did see a dip, not as extreme as many of our neighbors, but have continued to work hard to see improvements. We had another little dip this year. We're working hard to resolve that, but on the right path forward, we believe. As a matter of fact, our performance in English language arts last year exceeded all other Cowlitz County district, as well as Vancouver and Evergreen in Clark County. Mathematics, similar picture, but we are regained and are back to our 16-17 levels and an upward trajectory, again, exceeding all Cowlitz County districts with the exception of our neighbor immediately to the north, Kalama, and exceeding Vancouver and Evergreen. Science, we are top in the area. We've seen great increases since COVID, and again, exceeding all Cowlitz districts and Vancouver's and Evergreen's. Another factor that's important to understand is student growth. Every district has a different collection of students. They all come in at different starting points. As an example, Woodland has one of the highest proportion of second language learners of any district in Southwest Washington. And so growth can be a challenge. But what we look for is how much the average child grows from one year to the next. Anything above 50% means we are growing faster than average. If you look at English language arts, starting in 16-17, when we really have started pushing hard academically, we've had growth year over year exceeding the 50% average. Mathematics, the same thing. There are other metrics that we consider, one being students who receive dual credit, kids who are able to pick up high school and college credit simultaneously, which helps success beyond high school. And you can see that students receiving dual credit has just increased over time, pretty significant growth. Another area is students who are on track to graduate. Our ninth grade students in this last year were just under 80% of students who have passed every grade in ninth grade. The state average is well below 70% or around 70%. So Woodland continues to show growth and do well on getting kids prepared to graduate and graduating them on time. Another question we got last year was that this is in 2023. Somebody said, well, my tax statement says that the levy is $3.31, yet you're advertising $2.10. Which one is right? And actually, both of them are right. The levy rate on the 23 statement was a combination of the repayment of the 2012 construction bonds and the EP&O levy. This is how it broke down. The capital projects levy of $1.21, the EP&O levy of $2.10. When you add it all up, it's $3.31. Going forward with the hopeful approval of this EP&O levy, this is what that combined tax rate would be. There may be additional questions that you may have. I would ask that you email me at greenm@woodlandschools.org. Happy to answer any questions, and any questions that we get will be posted online. Thanks for viewing, and thanks for your time.